And of course, welcome to today's webinar. I am David Chin from Mural, and I'll be one of your hosts for today, broadcasting live from San Francisco, California. We had almost 3,500 registrants from about 73 countries for this one. So again, thank you all so much for helping create this amazing, diverse community. It's keeps growing, getting better and better. Really excited about today's webinar. Again, very excited and truly honored to introduce our guest host, Head of Media at AJ&Smart, Brittni Bowering. As many of you know, AJ&Smart has some of the most respected and most watched sprint design-related content online. Their YouTube and Instagram accounts have become essential resources, and they've really fostered this huge tribe. And Brittni has a big, big hand in that. She also hosts a podcast with her AJ&Smart teammate, Penny Blackmore, called the Happy Hour Career Talk. She's a sprint expert. She trains facilitators. She gives keynotes at conferences around the world, a real superstar. So hello, Brittni, and thank you so much for joining us today. But before I hand it over to Brittni, just a few details about the webinar. You should all see a Q&A panel in the Zoom interface, so any questions you have throughout the webinar, just type them in the Q&A panel. You also notice that you have the ability to upvote any of the questions that are asked. So at the end of the webinar, we block off time and Brittni will address the most upvoted questions. We'll also have Laura from the AJ&Smart team and some floaters from the Mural team answering questions in the chat as we go. So please don't be shy. Submit your questions to the Q&A panel and upvote any questions you would like to get answered. And with that, let's get to it. Brittni, take it away.
Thank you, David, and thanks for having me. I'm really excited. I think I've done so many live Q&As and live, chat classes and whatever, but I've never actually done a webinar per se. So I'm very excited. This is my first one. So let's hope it goes well. Okay, so I guess I'll just jump right in. We are, of course, AJ&Smart. David did a pretty great job introducing us. But if you are maybe a little bit unfamiliar with who we are and what we do, we're basically a small digital product design and innovation studio. And we're based in Berlin, Germany. We're a very small team as well. We're about 20, it's like 23 people right now, I think. And basically what we do is we help our clients get started with their projects. We help them build better products faster is kind of our little tagline for now. And we do this by using the design sprint. So it's our biggest tool in our toolbox for sure. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself a little bit later, but maybe a little bit more about AJ&Smart. Before I do that, though, I do want you guys to consider a couple of questions, and you can answer in the comments if you want. That actually might be kind of fun, get some comments rolling in. I would love for you to just consider these questions. So anytime let's say, how often have you gone to a meeting where the outcome of the meeting is that you scheduled another meeting? Just consider that for a moment. Usually when I ask this in rooms, we've got some hands raised. That's a good sign. That's a very common problem. Oh my gosh, my screen is being covered in hands raised. That's really cool. Okay, this is a really great little platform. Okay, second question. How many of you guys out there who you started a project, right? And you got super excited because it's a really exciting, interesting project. And you kind of started rolling with it and the team's together and you're all aligned and everything's working really well. And then slowly, as weeks pass and months pass, you kind of get really misaligned, right? And the project kind of gets off course and slowly you kind of just become less and less excited about this project. And you might even start, just dreading coming to work on this thing anymore. And maybe at some point it won't even actually launch. So you won't actually even get to the point of making this happen. Okay, I see hands raised. This is very good. And the last question that I have for you guys is who here feels this kind of pressure to innovate, right? Like either from your manager or even from yourself, even you feel like I need to innovate, I need to, be more innovative, whatever that means. But sometimes you find it difficult to either with your team actually get them together to do this innovation, or to like get that momentum and keep the momentum going. Hands raised. Excellent. Lots of hands raised. This is perfect. Okay, great. So I'm here to tell you guys that you're not alone. So here at AJ&Smart, we have traveled around the world, worked with companies, many gigantic companies, big companies, innovative companies as well, like startups. And it really is kind of crazy that all of these companies that we've worked with are facing these exact same challenges. They're all having the same problems. They're like having trouble really kind of keeping momentum going. They're having trouble making decisions. They're having trouble making things happen efficiently. So it's kind of just nice to know that you're not actually alone in this feat. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and I'll actually go through exactly what I'm going to talk to you guys about today, so you'll have a really nice outline. You can figure out whether it's worth your time or not. But first, a little bit about me. Oh, that's an alarmingly large photo on this iMac. Wow. Okay, so I'm Brittni. I'm actually Canadian. A lot of people think that I'm American, but I am in fact from Canada, from Calgary, if you are familiar with the area. Any other Canadians in the room? Raise hands. Hey, Canadians. Yes. Cool. There they are. Cool. So I'm from Canada. I've lived in Berlin, though, for 6.5 years. I am what you could call a design sprint expert. So I'm on the training team. I'm one of our training leads, and I go around the world teaching about design sprints, how to use them, how to implement them, how to facilitate them, everything basically, and everything in between as well. I joined AJ&Smart 2.5 years ago, and basically that was right when we were transitioning into our only offering design sprints to our clients. So I had to kind of learn very quickly and just kind of roll with the punches and figure it out really quickly what this whole design sprint thing was. I'm also, since starting at AJ&Smart, I have now taken on the kind of role of being our brand person. So I take care of teaching our online communities about the design sprint as well. And, helping them with all their challenges when they're trying to actually get the buy-in, when they're trying to actually run design sprints within a big organization. That's a huge one. So I'm doing all of those kinds of things, and in the outward facing. So you might have, if you know AJ&Smart, you've probably seen my face somewhere. Okay, and then I also host a podcast, which is actually what David already said that, with a friend of mine about work life and career, and that's kind of where my passion lies. I really love helping people be happier at work, and the design sprint has a lot to do with that. And then I also do stand-up comedy. So bet you didn't know that. That is something that I do as a hobby on the side. I started doing that 2 years ago, and I just thought I would throw that in there just to, shake things up a little bit in this whole product design world. So today, our agenda, this is what I'm going to go through with you guys. The first thing we're going to look at is a quick overview of the Design Sprint 2.0. So this is, I'll tell you a little bit about the differences, how we're running design sprints right now, so you can have an idea of what that actually looks like. I saw in the pre-questionnaire, a lot of people were interested in that. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I know that a lot of you already know about the design sprint. You don't need me to go through what that is and how it looks. Then I'm going to go through the principles, though, the design sprint principles, the things that basically the design sprint is built on, and then talk about a little bit how you can actually implement them in your everyday work life. The third thing is going to be how to get the buy-in. So this is probably the challenge that gets brought up most often when we're talking about design sprints. How can you actually get your manager on board, your CEO, your team? How can you get the budget, the resources, all those things that you do actually need in order to run a design sprint? We get a lot of questions also about running one-person design sprints, and that's not really a thing. You do actually need a team, and you do need people to commit a bit of time. So how do you get them to do that? And then the fourth thing is repurposing the design sprint. So taking little pieces of the design sprint and being able to actually use them in your work with your team or as a solo worker as well. So we'll go through a bit of those. And that's a really fun part. I love doing it. I do it all the time. I take the design sprint, I rip it apart and put it back together for, for whatever kind of workshop or whatever outcome I'm looking to get from a team. Then we're going to go through the ultimate meeting tool. This is the tool that we use all the time at AJ&Smart for basically making sure that we're making decisions when we're coming together and making sure that we're making them actionable. So I'm gonna show you guys what that looks like, and also at the end we'll send you like the PDF of those exercises and a really great breakdown of how you can actually do that yourself. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about is show you a little bit like some kind of case study type things around integrating the design sprints into like a really big organization, which of course is a problem that everybody comes to us for. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit about Lego, who we've worked with a lot, and they have actually managed to disseminate the design sprint across their organization. And they've run hundreds of organizations. They've run hundreds of design sprints within Lego at this point, which is pretty crazy, especially because it's a physical product, which is also kind of wild. Okay. So let's start by just going through really quickly just kind of the story of AJ&Smart and how we decided and why we decided to start running design sprints. It's kind of interesting just to know a bit of the background so that you know why we do the things we do. So we started as a classic agency. We were, taking on really big projects, really big budgets, long-term projects. So we were working with people for, companies for like years at a time. And basically what we found was there was obviously a bit of frustration building up, but we did a lot of waiting around, right? Like this lovely, adorable little boy looking out the window, waiting for someone to make a decision, someone to tell us a direction that we're going to go in, someone to finish something and hand it off or whatever it might be. There was just a lot of waiting around. There was also a lot of waste, a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted resources. It was just sort of a lot of kind of busy work going on where we felt like, what are we actually doing to make this project happen or make this, product launch or create this service? And there was just a lot of waste. And we ended up feeling a lot like, particularly actually the gentleman sitting right in the front, just like kind of unmotivated, a bit bored, not excited anymore about the project, not excited about coming into work. And this is probably one of the most dangerous situations of all to be in for any company, is when your people who work for you are unmotivated. It's not a good place to be. So just really quickly, this is kind of a classic, this is if you know Lean Startup, then you'll of course be very familiar with this, but this is sort of how things are generally produced in a lot of different situations. So you start with an idea, you put that idea into production, you launch that idea, that thing, and then you get the data on it, and then maybe you feed the data back into the idea, and you iterate and you do it again. So it actually, this loop is quite small and pretty straightforward most of the time. It makes sense. Unfortunately, most of the time, production starts to look a little bit more like this. Takes a bit longer than you expected. Things go wrong. We're working together, but then we become misaligned, and it just goes on. And quite often, actually, something like this happens where we actually, are in production for so long that the thing we were trying to make doesn't actually even launch. And that's kind of the danger of it all, obviously. So that's basically what the design sprint is doing. It's taking you from idea to data and avoiding this long production and launch phase. So you're getting the data right away, you're seeing what worked, what didn't, and then you can feed that back into the idea and actually build the thing that will work. So that's just a really nice, and consider I know a lot of you guys are thinking, yeah, we know this, but what's really cool about these slides that I'm showing you and that we will, I think, share with you after this, if I'm not mistaken, David, yeah, is that these are really great visuals for people. Every time we show these kinds of slides where we show people that we understand their challenges and their problems. We show them how things usually work. We show them how they actually work, right? And the challenges behind that. And then we show them what the difference is. And that is where you're really going to have people nodding along, and you're really going to be able to convince people more, is when you can really show them the value and show them that you understand. But we'll get into more of that later. I digress. Okay. So many of you are obviously familiar with Jake Knapp, lovely guy, author of Sprint. He came up with the design sprint concept, obviously, and his whole shtick is that he came from Google Ventures. And in Google Ventures, they had this big challenge of figuring out what ideas they should actually invest in, and they wanted to figure it out quickly. So that's where the design sprint all kind of came from. That's what he was trying to come up with, was a process for how we can actually test an idea quickly so we know whether it's worth pursuing or not. That's the gist of it. Okay, Design Sprint 2.0, let's jump into that. So we have the week long, it's still a 1 week process. We have shaved down some of the exercises, so some of them are a little bit different than what you might be used to. So I'll show you kind of day by day what that looks like. First, obviously, we start with the sprint team, which is, of course, a team with that's kind of bringing different perspectives from different parts of the business. It's a cross-functional team, and the idea is that you get a lot of ideas, a lot of opinions, and a lot of information and data from all over the business so that you're not having to chase that down afterwards. Monday is different in the Design Sprint 2.0 than what you might be used to. Monday is when we actually align on the problem, which is similar, but we're actually already in sketch mode on Monday afternoon. So at this point, when we actually leave on Monday night, we have aligned on the challenge. We've actually gone into ideation mode. So we've done the lightning demos, we've gotten inspired, and then we've actually sketched ideas, and all the team has put forth their ideas. So this is a little bit different. Monday is actually a bit of a combination of Monday and Tuesday in the original design sprint. So this is a bit of a difference in the 2.0. We're doing the map and everything in this one day. The next day we come in the morning and there's the big reveal. So that's when we actually turn over all the concepts. Everybody has the look through. We do the voting. We make the decision on which concept we actually want to prototype. And then in the afternoon, we have our storyboarding session. And that we've also, you can actually check out our YouTube to find out the kind of hack the storyboarding hack that we do before storyboarding that helps it just go so much easier. And we were just running a training today, and it's so funny how storyboarding is always just like, it's a difficult thing for a team to do together. And the problem is, though, obviously, that there's discussion and everything like that involved. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice with this hack. It really, really helps. So I can even send that to you. David, I'm linking you to our YouTube channel afterwards. Anyways, okay. And then Wednesday is actually our prototyping day. So usually this would actually be on Thursday in the original design sprint, but we do it on Wednesday, the full day of prototyping, whatever that may look like, whatever you're prototyping. Then we have Thursday is our testing day. So that's the full day of 5 tests. And so we're doing that on Thursday and not on Friday. So I bet you probably wondering what the heck happens on Friday. Other than copious amounts of alcohol consumption, just kidding. We do actually use Friday to synthesize everything. So that's the one thing I think in the Design Sprint 2.0 that is quite different from the original is you actually have a really nice sort of chunk of time to take a look at what happened in the sprint, to digest it, to go over all of the user tests, to take all of the data that you have, which is just, it's a gigantic amount of information, and figure out what the next step is. So we take the Friday to do that and we take a lot of, some things like new features that we might want to incorporate. We actually put them on like an effort impact scale to make sure that, which ones to prioritize them, so we know which ones we should actually work on first. So it's a day of like fully digesting what actually took place in the last 4 days. Okay, so that's the Design Sprint 2.0. There it is. It's pretty simple. We have definitely taken a lot of the exercises, reduced the amount of time. We've replaced a lot of things that basically anytime there was discussion in the Design Sprint, we replaced it with something a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more, a little less discussion-y. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Cool. So, one thing I want to mention to you guys, if you want to learn more about the actual design sprint, the exercises, how those things work, we do have a design sprint masterclass. Some of you might already know about this, but it is like 60 so videos all about running design sprints, about preparing for them, checklists, all of the kinds of things that you would need in order to facilitate one yourself. And what's cool about it is it's a course, but it's self-run. So you can actually do the course in your own pace, and you can actually, sign up on Friday, and you could, if you were a bit crazy enough, you could actually run a design sprint on Monday. You'd have all the tools you needed. So that's really cool. And we're going to give you a nice little discount at the end of the webinar. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that if you're interested. Okay, so I want to go through really quickly the design sprint principles. Now, these things, so everybody, I think most people in this webinar know what the design sprint is. Maybe they've been a part of it. Maybe they've done one before. Actually, let's maybe run our first poll. I'd love to know how many people have actually taken part in a design sprint before. So let's see if we can get a nice little action there. Ooh, oh, it's quite close actually. We've got a 50, wow, it's like 50-50. Great. I wasn't expecting that. Cool, okay, this is very good to know actually. Awesome. Okay, thank you. Can I get that off of my, I don't know how to, ooh. Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's go on to the principles. So the first core principle of the design sprint is that we never rely on creativity. So being creative is this like funny thing that is, everyone sort of covets, right? It's this very like special thing. It's like, well, I'm having a very creative morning and I'm feeling like I can really make things happen because I'm feeling creative, or I am creative. The cool thing about a process is that you don't actually have to rely on being creative. So introducing process into your workflow, even if you're working in a creative environment, is going to be really helpful for you to kind of reduce the amount of pressure you're feeling to always thinking innovatively and always having the best idea. It's not really about that. It's actually more about executing and then being able to quickly iterate and finding out the data behind your ideas. So definitely the design sprint, we're not relying on creativity, and that's kind of a nice feeling, at least for me. Okay, getting started is more important than being right. Can I get a what? Raised hands? All right, there we go. I like we got lots, cool. So this is obviously a huge one. Getting started is much better than doing something perfectly or having the right idea right off the bat. So we always say to our clients and our trainees that taking a step forward, taking a step in a direction is always better. Even if you don't know if it's the right step forward, it's always better than standing still. So take action. That's kind of the biggest part of the design sprint. It's 1 week, you go in with a challenge, you come out with a user-tested prototype. It's the most action you can possibly take in a week. Yes, good. So the next one is that we believe in minimizing discussion, or the design sprint believes in that, and therefore AJ&Smart believes in that. So discussion is, it's dangerous on so many levels. Discussion allows for the people who are loudest to be heard, the people who are in the most senior positions to get their way and push their agenda. And if you minimize discussion and put tools in place to make sure that you're not relying on this whole discussion thing happening constantly, you'll actually be able to get so much more done. You'll be able to make decisions quicker, and probably you'll come up with a lot more ideas that you didn't see coming from, the introverted person that works on your team, or even someone who's new, who maybe just doesn't feel comfortable voicing their opinion right away. If you can put tools in place where they will feel comfortable to put forth their thoughts and ideas, that's going to be really beneficial. Okay, and together alone, this is the one that gets everybody kind of weirded out at first when it comes to the design sprint, because you're actually going through a lot of exercises in the same room, sitting at the same table with a group of people, but you're not speaking. So we're like, especially I'm from Canada, and North Americans, and actually just humans, I would say in general, we love to talk. And if there's someone there, silence is odd and it's weird, and everyone wants to fill silence all the time. Except for Germans, I think. From living in Germany, I've learned that, and having a German boyfriend, they're okay with silence, which is kind of nice. Anyway, I'll not get off track. You have to come to a comedy show for me to talk more about my German boyfriend. Anyway, okay, so Together Alone. We're doing exercises as a team, but we're working alone on our own solutions and actually putting forward our own ideas. And this is a very, very powerful principle, and it's probably the one that people get most attracted to. They're most scared of it at first, and then they're like, oh wow, that was so powerful. Like I really felt like we were getting so many different inputs and everybody was still working together towards the same outcome or towards the same challenge. We were working on the same challenge. So it's really, it's a really good one. Okay. So let's jump forward to how do you get the buy-in? Let's quickly do another poll actually before I jump into this. So the next poll I'd like to do is I want to know if you guys have had issues getting people to commit to something like a design sprint. Maybe not the specific design sprint, but tools like it, you know, even design thinking or anything that's like, yeah, processy or innovation-y. Yeah, I figured this is the people that said no, you're so lucky. You must work in just a wonderful, innovative, vibrant place. Cool. Yeah. So about 75% of you said yes. And that sounds about right to me. I thought it would be more like 98%. And too scared to try, that's another 9%. Yeah, and that's totally fair because introducing anything new into an organization is definitely very scary, for sure. So the first thing that I would suggest is you have to get these people nodding, right? And I know that sounds very simple, but at the beginning of this webinar, I asked you guys some questions that got you saying like, yeah, heck yes, that's a challenge that I face all the time. That's something that happens all the time to me. And when you let people know that you understand where they're coming from, that it really they open up to you providing solutions for these challenges. And so that's really important. If you are going to be presenting something about the design sprint or pitching something about it, I would really highly recommend starting with a few questions to kind of, and also questions are very engaging. That's why they've got these polls going on the webinar. People love to be asked their opinion and people love to give their opinion. So you should let them. And by doing that, you'll also let them know that you understand their challenges, you know where they're coming from, and you might have something that could help. And I know that's very basic, but I will get into more kind of tangible stuff. This is actually a really big one that has worked for a lot of companies that we've worked with. So running a pilot design sprint. So it's like a pilot project. So what I mean when I say pilot project, in case it might not be something that's actually universally used, but that means actually like lighthouse project is a good one as well. So pilot or lighthouse, something where you can go back to your company, the rest of the company, the teams, and you can show them what happened during this design sprint. So this is a big reason why we actually leave our clients every time with some really with some nicely visual items that they can take and show the rest of their organization. So that helps them so much because they can be like, look what we did. Look at all these nice fancy pictures of us putting up Post-its, of us moving around the room. And it can be as simple as taking photos while you're running a design sprint. So you send them photos, we send them a really nice breakdown of what happened in the design sprint, what are the outcomes, where they should go, how they should move forward. And this is something that is really easy to share within an organization. And many, many times, and actually I have an example here. We worked with Aon, and Aon is an energy company. They came to us, one of the teams came to us, and we ran a design sprint with them. They went back to their company, and they I think they put it in their internal, newsletter or something like that. And all of a sudden we had teams coming at us from everywhere, wanting to run design sprints. So this is a really, really great way to get people excited, is to kind of promote it a little bit, right? Have some promotional materials. That really helps. Also, important is to ease people into a new process. So this isn't something where I think it would be very rare that you'd be able to just be like, hey, could you just block a week of your calendar? I have this like new thing that I want to try, right? It's not going to happen, especially not with senior stakeholders and the people that you actually need in the room for your design sprint. So you need something to act as kind of like a gateway drug, so to speak, just to get them to see how it works and for them to, once they experience something similar to how the design sprint works, they're going to be much more excited to actually, dive in and do one themselves. Something like this is a great example. We've worked a lot with Bain & Company. And at Bain, we do small little workshops with them. So we teach them how they can actually take these little innovation workshops and use them with their clients and their customers, I should say. Because they're obviously a consulting company, so they'll have customers who they're working with, and they need these kind of like little workshops that don't require so much buy-in and so much time from their customers. And that is something that works really, really well. So I think that breaking it down, which we're going to go over how to do that, is a really great way to get the buy-in. Okay, so now let's dive into repurposing the design sprint. How can you use these exercises in different ways to help you actually promote innovation within your organization? So we have the expert interview. Now, if you've never been in a design sprint, I hope you are familiar with this exercise, but it's basically the how might we exercise. So it's someone is talking about a challenge or a problem and everyone's taking how might we notes. And it's a really great way to make sure people are listening and reframing their kind of the challenges into opportunities. So it's how might we, and then you kind of state the problem or in kind of a positive way. And it's a really, really great way to run meetings. That's kind of how we do it. We, anytime we're running any kind of meeting where we're talking about a challenge or something that we're facing and we need to come up with solution ideas, we always write how might we's. And it's a nice way to frame how you're taking notes about something. So it actually, what's really cool, I'm just going to jump back to that actually. What is interesting about the how might we is it's something invented by Procter & Gamble in the 70s. And so what's nice about it is it reframes things positively, right? So the how part of the statement actually lets people know that how means like it is possible. Right? There is a way, it is possible. Might, it sort of implies that there are multiple ways that you could actually solve this problem. And then we insinuates that we're going to do it together. So it's just a really beautiful way to state problems. Or challenges, I should call them. Okay, there's Michael delivering his thing, and there's a nice picture of how might we's. Now, after we do how might we voting in a regular meeting, we would probably vote on the how might we's to bubble up the most important challenges. This is really kind of an important one. We'd put them on the wall, just like you're seeing here. This is all kind of part of the design sprint, but we take it out on its own and we use it for meetings. And we'd vote on the challenges and vote those ones up. And then we would prioritize the challenges and tackle them kind of one by one by priority, right? Whatever is most important to us. What's really great from the design sprint is the note and vote. So this is something where anytime you need to come up with some ideas or make a decision on something, you get everyone to vote down all their ideas on Post-its. You stick them up on the wall. You vote on them, use those lovely red voting dots, and you prioritize the ideas. Right? And then you can either test them or run with them and see if they work or even just implement them if there's something really simple. This is a really, really excellent thing to take out of the design sprint. There's a lot of note and voting in the design sprint, and you can use that in kind of your everyday work life, anytime you're in a situation with a team. Lightning demos. So lightning demos are an excellent exercise. This is something that we do to get inspiration. So it's kind of like when you would kind of do a scan around to get some ideas, right? Like it's not a brainstorming session, but it's actually something where you would, like Tim is doing in this photo, you would actually find something in the market that could be interesting for us to consider if we're coming up with new ideas for a certain challenge, or we want to let me think of an example that we had, like, oh, we want to redo our website, and we're like, oh, we want to kind of rejig our website. How should we do that? We'll do a quick round of lightning demos where everyone will come up with 2 to 3 things that are actually currently in the market right now, and we'll show them to each other to get everybody inspired. And it is such a valuable exercise to use in any time that you need to kind of like, I'm feeling stuck and I need to get inspired a little bit here. That's a really great one to use. Okay, sketching. I know David's thinking, Brittni, you're running out of time. But I'm not doing too terribly, I think. Oh, okay, we might have to skip a little bit of this stuff. Okay, so we can't run over time, right, David?
Actually, we can flow over a little bit.
A little bit. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're getting the good stuff, so yeah, keep it going.
Okay, cool. So sketching. So anytime that you, there's a few sketching exercises in the design sprint. One of them is, which is my personal favorite to repurpose, is Crazy Eights. So Crazy Eights is a wild little exercise where you actually take something visual, usually, but it doesn't have to be actually. It could be really anything, but you're taking something and you're drawing it or rejigging it 8 different times in 8 minutes. So you can see on the screen here, this is a really good example. You're taking something, you're drawing it a certain way, and then actually you're timing yourself, and every minute you're changing to the next square. So then you're really forcing yourself to come up with many, many different ways of representing something. And this is such a good exercise to use. We actually have a video on this too. If you're like, I feel like I need more information on how that works, you can check out our YouTube and just look up Crazy Eights and it will come up. But basically, it's good for if you want to write a piece of copy. Let's say you need a headline for your new website, or even within a product, what's the first thing they see when they download my app? Whatever it is, a piece of copy is super, super great. A landing page, if you want to know what it should look like, how things should be structured, that's really great. The first, like email, even an email newsletter. Like if you have a newsletter at your work and you need a headline, this is a really good one to use for that too, because it just helps you push past your first thought. Often when we have a first idea of how we should do something, and we never really look past that. We just sort of assume, we just go ahead with that first thought. So this is a really, really great one to use. Also, the concept sketch from the design sprint, which is kind of a key exercise, obviously. This is when we actually put everyone from the team actually draws their own concept on how they think we should solve the challenge. This is something like, if you have an idea, this is kind of what it looks like. If you have an idea of something that you want to put forward, drawing a quick sketch of it, like creating a concept where you can actually pitch it, where with like 3 kind of parts of like, this would happen, and then this would happen, and this would happen, is a really great way to help people understand something. This is the principle, of course, that's coming into effect here is tangible over discussion, which actually I called Minimise Discussion. But the point is showing someone something tangible, like on paper, like a sketch or an example, which is what, like the lightning demos, you show someone an example. It's so much more powerful than just describing an idea to someone or trying to explain something, because things will get lost in translation. But if you have a really concrete thing that you're showing someone and it's visual, there's no real other way to interpret it, which is great, depending on how your drawing skills are, sketching skills. Okay. And now I want to show you guys the ultimate meeting tool. We basically use this exercise a lot. We use it within AJ&Smart. We use it within meetings with us. We use it with our clients. We actually use this as well as a pre-sprint exercise to figure out what the most important challenges are and to kind of create a scope for a sprint. So this is a really, really good one. And let's dive into that one. So it's called the Lightning Decision Jam. And the purpose of this exercise is to bring a group of people together. Like, this is in its most basic form. You can bring a group of people together. You can make a decision quickly. and you can get an actionable outcome. So it's not just about making a decision. It's not just about coming up with ideas and making a decision. It's about leaving this meeting with your team with something where it's like, we are now going to move forward and this is how we're going to do it. So that is a really key part of the Lightning Decision Jam, which I will now call LDJ because it's a whole mouthful if I keep trying to say that. Okay, so the basic idea is that we are taking all of the design sprint principles and we're kind of like mashing them together into a nice like 60-minute exercise. I'm going to obviously go through this quickly, so we're not going to do the exercise, although with Mural we probably could. Isn't that right, David? All right, not today, but another day soon. Okay, so one thing that before I run through the exercises of how this all works, what's kind of cool is we, on my very first week of being at AJ&Smart, we actually ran an LDJ, and this was our challenge that we came up with. So the whole idea, and Jake knows this, by the way, I just want you guys to know that. It's not like some weird plot that we have with him, but I will tell the story because it is quite interesting. The LDJ is super powerful for even very like strategic challenges. So for us, we had just started running design sprints and we thought, okay, we want to be known as the company that runs design sprints. So how are we going to do this? And one of the things that came up was we should actually get aligned with Jake Knapp. We should meet him. We should somehow be in touch with him. Maybe we run trainings with him. We don't know what that would look like. But the first step was, and the challenge was, we have no connection to him. So the how might we that came up at the beginning of the LDJ was, how might we get in touch with Jake Knapp, who is the author of Sprint, in case you were wondering who that is. So we took that how might we, and we came up with a wide variety of solutions. So some of the solutions came up were like, find a connection on LinkedIn. Somehow let's try to find someone to introduce us. Another one that came up was write him a cold email, just being like, hey, Jake, what's up, right? Another one that was let's write an article about this Share the Meal sprint that we did with the UN, and just to kind of show him that we're using his tool to do something really great. And then, another one was like, let's rally our followers. Let's do something like that. These are, we came up with many, many more solutions, but these were a few that kind of bubbled up. And the one that got voted up the most was the article on the Share the Meal sprint. So what we did was we actually wrote this article. We gathered all this stuff from the sprint. We wrote the article. We sent it to Jake, and he was super excited about it. Who wouldn't be? We were helping feed children in need, right? So we sent that to him. He was really excited. And then I think it was like 6 weeks later, we were in San Francisco meeting with him. It was quite funny actually. He was like, hey, this sounds really interesting. I'd love to hear more about it. And we just kind of were like, yeah, we just happen to be in San Francisco next month. We had no flights booked. We had nothing planned. But sometimes you have to make things happen. So we went to San Francisco. We met with Jake. And at this point, if you know a lot about, or if you know some about AJ&Smart, you'll know that we run trainings all over the world with him. We have a podcast with him. We have an online masterclass that has Jake Knapp in it. And we're like running Q&As with him all the time. So we're aligned quite tightly with Jake Knapp at this point. And it's all from the LDJ. That's how it all happened, which is quite cool. So how it works in practice, basically, the first exercise is actually where you're going to define what the challenges you want to work on. So you do the classic sailboat exercise. So you draw a sailboat in the middle of a whiteboard. You start with what's moving us forward. So you get the team to take a few minutes. Now, before I get into too much detail, or before you feel like I'm not getting into too much detail, we will be providing you with all of these steps in a PDF form. So you can just kind of get an idea of how it works, but you'll actually have the tangible instructions on how you can actually facilitate it. So you don't need to, take screenshots or whatever you would want to do here. Okay, so you start with what's moving us forward. You get the team to come up with any kind of like really kind of rack their brains on what is actually positive right now. In this example that I'm showing you today, I'm talking about innovation. So this is kind of like, how can we be more innovative? That was kind of the broad scope, which it can be very broad. That's totally fine. So, we came up with a few of these examples. We have the budgets. We are willing to do it. And we have the right people. That's some really good stuff. And the reason why we actually start with the positives is actually it's really nice to get everybody in a positive state, right? Feeling hopeful, feeling like powerful. It really does help. So you don't start with the challenges. You start with what's moving us forward, and then you stick everything up. So you stick up all of those Post-its above the boat. So on the sail, because the sail moves a boat forward. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's how a sail works. So you stick them up on the wall, and everybody kind of has this moment where they like relish in how nice and wonderful everyone is. Then you get the team to think about what's holding you back. So you actually then get them to write Post-its, hopefully a different color Post-it, on what's actually holding us back from being innovative or from running innovation, whatever, having some kind of innovation culture. And like some examples, company culture doesn't allow for failure, nothing ever gets done, so we don't actually make decisions, and people are scared of innovation. So there's some really common problems when you want to try to introduce innovation. So you pop those up as well, but you put them below the boat because those are holding the boat back. They're sinking the boat. So you put them on the anchor because the anchor actually holds the boat back. So how that works. Gosh, I'm good. I should be a sailor. I'm telling you. Okay. So then what we actually do is take all of the challenges, take all of the things that are holding us back, and we vote on them. We usually say about 3 votes, but this kind of depends on how many ideas or how many challenges have actually come up. So the more challenges that have come up, the more votes you're going to need because you're going to need people to be able to vote on several other ones. Then what we do is we take them, we arrange them in order of top voted. So you just make that nice little tree. I'm sure a lot of you are very, very familiar with how that works, so that you know what are the most important challenges that we want to focus on, what everybody thinks we need to actually solve. Then we take the top voted the top voted challenge, and we turn it into a how might we. This is a bit of a challenging one. It kind of takes someone who knows how might we's work and knows how to reframe a problem. But once you do a couple of them, they come out very, very quickly. So let's say that our top voted was innovation is siloed to the innovation lab, just for example. The how might we that might come out of that is how might we promote innovation across our organization, right? So it's kind of reframing it in a positive way and in a way where it's like, oh, okay, we could find solutions to this challenge. Because often when you state a problem, it's sort of, innovation is siloed to the innovation lab. Okay, it doesn't really open us up for possibilities. So that's what the how might we does there. Then you jump into solutions. So that's when you jump into solution mode. It happens quite quickly. So you take the how might we, which is how might we promote innovation across our organization, and you get everyone to come up with as many solutions as they possibly can that might solve this challenge. And you can remind them as well when they're doing this that we want 10x solutions, not 10% solutions. We want things like think big, because we can always dial back, but we can't, it's harder to dial up, right? And don't worry about feasibility and legality. Just try to come up with a solution that will help us solve this problem, because we will actually be then we will be prioritizing them based on these things afterwards. So you just get them to get some blue Post-its, some Sharpies, and give them a certain amount of minutes. Usually we do like 10 minutes or so to produce as many solutions as possible. Put some nice workshop music on and just tell them to go for it. Then we do the classic, right? We just noted, and now we're going to vote. So we're going to stick all of our ideas up on a wall, a surface of some kind, and we're going to vote. So the team, everyone on the team gets to vote, and you can choose how many votes they get. We usually give about 5, but you can again kind of alter that based on how many ideas come up. The next thing you're going to do is prioritize the ideas. So what is the most popular idea? What do people think will actually help us solve this problem? So prioritizing those is quite an easy exercise. The next exercise is not quite as easy. We are going to then put our ideas on an effort impact scale. Now, this is tricky because as a facilitator, you want to minimize discussion while you're doing this. So you want to really try to get these ideas on an effort impact without having, a bunch of discussion, a bunch of arguing. And the best way to do this is to only allow your team to either say higher or lower. So you take the first post-it off the wall, you read it to everyone, you put it on your effort impact, you say, okay, we're gonna focus on impact to start, impact higher or lower, right? And you get people to say higher, lower, higher. And usually everyone will be like higher, higher, higher. And then someone will be like, oh, lower, lower. And then you place it, right? And then you say, okay, what about effort? Effort higher or lower? And you start in the midpoint and then you kind of shimmy it around until you find the place where it sticks. The first post-it is always the hardest to stick, but then after that you have kind of a nice sort of gauge of where everything else should be. An itchy nose. Okay. Good. So the effort impact is, it's really, really effective. And obviously a lot of you have probably used it before, but what I found really interesting, we were using effort impact a lot, and then we decided to, we were running effort impact, this exact LDJ with Lego, and they showed us this, which is quite cool. So they break down their effort impact into segments. So high impact, low effort is something that you should do now. Okay. The next thing, sorry, I just got a little message. Okay, the next thing you should do is make a project, right? It should, if it's high impact, high effort, then make it a project. If it's low impact, low effort, make it a task. If it's low impact, high effort, you should obviously forget that. So this is a really, really powerful one to use. Okay, and the last thing of the LDJ, and then I'm going to have to go to Q&A. I'm really sorry, but you're going to get all of my slides, so you'll have all the information. So the last thing you're going to do is make this actionable. You're going to take the one that was in the top left, right, the highest, leftmost winning idea, and you're going to make it into an actionable item. So you're going to take it, you're going to write down 3 steps on how you can either test this idea or actually just make this idea happen. So it depends on how big the idea is, right? If it's doing something like the UN article, that is something where actually I have an example of that. That's something where we just did it, right? We gathered all the information, we wrote it, we sent it to Jake. So it's as easy as that. Okay. The idea here is using the LDJ, you can actually show them how the design sprint works rather than telling them, right? Show them how these philosophies can be put together and how you can actually use the principles, to make decisions quickly, to make things actionable, and actually move forward with a lot of momentum. Okay, I don't know if I can skip through to the, okay, but we can go to, am I able to, I don't know if I can, okay, sorry you guys. I'm just gonna show you all of my screen for a while. Okay, I'm just missing a couple things, but so there's Q&A stuff. A few things, our YouTube channel, I'll send you a link to this, has every design sprint video you could ever want. Also, for more resources, you can follow us on Instagram. This is like, we have daily updates. It's AJ&Smart Design. It's really fun. We try to keep it, pretty light. So it's a fun account. We try to also provide a lot of value. So you can follow us that. And if you want to follow me personally, that's at Brittni Bow. My last name's Bowering. But anyway, and that's more on like work life and career stuff. Okay, our podcast is the Product Breakfast Club. I'm sending you a link to that as well in the after notes. And our code for your 500 I think it's actually 500 euros off. Sorry, that's a mistake in my slide. It's 500 euros off of the Design Sprint Masterclass is Mural webinar. And that we will also send to you in the email. So don't worry about that. Thank you so much. Maybe we can have a few questions and I will just rapid fire answer them. I'm really sorry, Laura. Laura's like, you need to go to Q&A. Sorry, David, as well.
This was perfect. We should jump in the Q&A just for time's sake.
Yes.
But, I mean, we've had over 500 people stay on this entire time, and lots of people hanging on throughout the end of the hour. So obviously, people are loving what you're saying. But let's get into the Q&A.
Okay.
So first, there were several questions that were around this theme of buy-in. So I'll just read a couple of the questions that were sent in there. How do you help individuals struggling within sprint activities to trust the process and embrace the ambiguity? So within the actual activities, how do you react when you say this is way too long, we can't put everything on hold? Yeah.
Okay, so the answer to the first question would be setting expectations. So what we spend a lot of time actually setting expectations for our clients, and even for like when we're training people on the fact that this is going to be a weird way of doing things. It's going to be different. It's going to be hard. You're going to be pushed a little bit more than you're used to on your, day-to-day work projects. But that is like what we're doing in the design sprint is we're taking months of work and we're smushing it down into a week. So it sort of makes sense that it's going to be difficult and it's going to be uncomfortable and you're going to feel like, like this isn't really working. And I feel like I want more input on that. And I want to do that a little bit better and make that more clear. All of those things are totally normal. And you need to make sure that your team knows that going in. This is the biggest thing, is that people don't spend enough time setting the expectations. And then the second question was about, sorry, what was the second part? Oh, sorry.
Approaching leaders in your company to give to
right, who don't have a week. Right. Okay, so when people say that they don't have the time for something like this, there are things you can do to make the time, like to make the commitment a little bit less intense. So you can make it so that you only need your key people in the room for the first 2 days, which is much less than a week. I know 2 days is still a lot for some people, but unfortunately for the design sprint to work, you really do need these key people. You need the decision maker in the room for the 2 days. You need the people who have the insights in the room for the first 2 days. But then once you're into prototyping, which for the Design Sprint 2.0 is Wednesday, once you're into that mode, you can send them away and they can go back to their regular work stuff and you can build the prototype and you can test it. It's more, more work obviously, but that's what we do at AJ&Smart. That's how our clients are able to commit, that to a design sprint with us, is because actually their time commitment isn't as big as a week. If you don't have that luxury, like if you really need the help for the whole week, what you can do is, you basically have to come up with a way to convince them that it's worth their time. So I think that's kind of about actually showing some case studies of things that have happened, show companies that are using the design sprint and how quickly they're rolling things out. I mean, people in senior roles, they understand that they want things to work, like their common goal is they want things to work more efficiently. They want to move faster. So if you're able to prove that you can do that, you stand a better chance for sure.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right. How about this? For people who have never run a design sprint, maybe not even participated in one, but they run meetings with their internal teams at work or in their organization, what would you say to them to get them started with adapting these sprint methods for their internal meetings?
Yeah. What I would say is, if you want to start really small, which is a nice way to do it, especially because if you work in a company where people aren't using Post-it notes and, that's kind of like these sort of ideas are foreign, you want to start really small, or else you're going to freak everybody out and everyone's going to think that, or if they don't like design thinking, let's say they had a bad experience with design thinking, whatever it might be, starting small. So you're at a meeting and everybody's kind of discussing certain things and it's like, oh, we can't come to a conclusion on what to do and it can be something like, this is a stupid example, but what to do for the summer party. You know what I mean? Like, what should we do for the summer party? Whatever. That's a really silly example, but you'll get the idea. So then you can say to everybody, hey, I have an idea. Why don't we all write down an idea that we think we should do for the summer party? And then we can pop all the ideas up on the wall and we can vote, right? And that's such a good idea, or such a great way to show people how this very small way of working, this small thing where you stop talking and start doing, is so powerful. And all of a sudden you guys will have a decision made on whatever it is you were discussing. And people will be very excited about it because they're not used to coming to decisions that quickly. And even if it wasn't their idea chosen, the relief that people feel when an actual decision is made is huge. And then after you've done the note and vote and you've kind of like, edged it in there and kind of like warmed people up, then I would ask a few people to do an LDJ with me. And I would say, I want to run a workshop with you guys. It's a bit of an experiment. I'm asking for an hour of your time, but let's see what comes out of it because I'm really excited about it. And hopefully, your colleagues trust you enough to let you do that.
Perfect. All right. How about this? What's a realistic outcome at the end of the 1 week sprint? So going back to the full sprint that you can hand over to the client, and what does that handover actually look like? Okay,
so something that I didn't quite get into in this webinar is that we actually run design sprints. We'll run a 1 week design sprint, and then we actually run an iteration sprint is what we call it. So we always cap a design sprint with another sort of mini design sprint right after the first one. And that's where we take the insights from the user tests, we take everything we learned, all the data, and we kind of do a quick iteration on the idea, on the solution, to get it a little bit closer to what what our user really wants, what they're excited about. And then we'll retest again. So at the end of that 2 week engagement, we are giving the client a executive summary of like what happened in the sprint, what were the challenges that came up, what were the common kind of user opinions, what did they think, what were they excited about, what didn't they care about, a prioritized list of like either features or like action points. So what should they work on first based on all of our research and our prototypes. So like a prioritized list of how they should do that they can literally take and kind of hand off to their, like whoever it is, their development team or their design team to get that rolling. They get all the prototypes, the design files, and they get obviously we do like a really nice handover follow-up call with them. They also get the user interviews. They get a recording of all of the user interviews that we did. So we do those remotely all the time. So we actually record them. We use Loom actually quite often. So then we'll hand those over to them as well. So they have like everything we worked on, like all of the assets, which is, they're always quite happy with that. We kind of take into account that they're probably not going to read or listen to everything, but we try to keep all the important stuff at the top. But yeah, that's basically the outcome of a design sprint.
Amazing, yeah. And I guess when thinking about, we know we're not talking much about running design sprints in Mural today in this webinar, but we're actually executing these using Mural with the clients throughout the design sprint process. It's also great to be able to give them access to those Murals, so there's this living, breathing document assets space
yes.
to go back to and have everything in one place. So
yes, so we have that as well. We're using exactly. We'll give them all of those kinds of things because we're actually also collecting and documenting everything in a remote way just to make it much easier to come back to. We used to do everything with Post-its all over the place, and that just became a little bit, it looks nice in photos, but it becomes a little bit silly to work with in any kind of future context if you want to come back to any interview you did or how might we get bubbled up or whatever it is. So that's a really good point.
Cool. All right, so here's an interesting question. Well, okay. So when we're thinking about aligning your team before the week-long sprint, there's some alignment that is needed, right? But when we're thinking about how the sprint activities translate to, the repurposed form for a smaller meeting, do you need to maintain any of that alignment before you jump into these activities, or is the way that you repurpose them enough where you can just jump right in without any like pre-work or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, we're doing, so before we go into a sprint, we have kind of a week 0 where we're prepping everything. We're having some calls with the client. We're definitely aligning on what the scope of the project is. I think that's one thing that people often forget about or don't consider, is that you could try to go into a design sprint without having already scoped out what the challenge is going to be like. But that's a pretty dangerous zone to be in. You might end up with a really massive scope or a way too narrow scope. So you need to definitely figure out what it is you're going to be working on. So we do that with the client before, and then they come in and we give a brief kind of expectation setting, like I said before, where we talk about just kind of, what's going to happen today, how it's all going to flow through. We make sure everybody's very kind of easygoing and happy, with nice coffees and all that kind of stuff. And so when we jump into the activities, the exercises, we're explaining them really, really well, but we're not necessarily aligning on like what each activity means in the whole grand scope of everything, right? In the grand scheme of the design sprint. So it's kind of, I don't know if I answered that perfectly, but when it comes to actually aligning on the exercises, we're just sort of asking our clients to trust us and trust in the process. So we'll definitely give them a really nice explanation so they won't be confused about what they're supposed to do, but they might not know the whole background of why we're doing it and what it's leading to and all that kind of stuff.
Got it. All right. This is a fun one. Well, I think it's an interesting one. In what way you minimize discussion while still making all sprint members feel heard and appreciated? So I learned a little bit about this from actually the first time I met you in San Francisco at the workshop that you guys are putting on about managing different personalities and egos. I guess some ties into that. But I'm also curious about how this can tie into meetings with your internal teams, where you're people that you know very well and speak to every day.
Yeah, this is really interesting because usually when we start doing things like note and vote or these exercises that are minimizing discussion, there's kind of these two spectrums. There's the people that are really loud usually, that are very upset that they're being put through this now. And then there's the people that are quieter, more introverted, or just or newer to the organization. And they're usually really excited that you're doing, that you're working like this. And the thing is, what I try to say to people is, we're going to try this. And the reason that we're going to try it is because I want everybody to be heard in this room. And unfortunately, if we don't, minimize the amount of discussion that we're doing and just focus on, putting things forward, putting ideas on the wall, we unfortunately, people, and I always I am one of the loud ones, so I always toss myself in there, which helps, and I always say unfortunately, someone like me might always get their idea pushed forward because I like to talk and I can be convincing, whereas someone who is quieter or less confident in what their role is or whatever it might be, might not feel as comfortable. So in order to have a level playing field and keep everything equal, let's try it like this. And I always like to kind of fall back on the let's try this. Don't force anyone to make a change in their work life forever, right? Let's just try this and see how it goes. And actually, the people who are against it or who feel like it's unnatural for them, because a lot of people also who are more oral are just not as good at writing their ideas down, right? Because they're more all about speaking and about talking about their ideas, which is fine. And that is a hurdle, right? But it's also like a skill, and you should kind of have this balance between those two. It's a difficult one. You have to kind of do that kind of juggling of egos and of personalities, and it's not easy. Being a facilitator of any kind is not an easy task at all. So I know that wasn't like a super satisfying answer, but I think it's hard actually to satisfy everyone in a group setting.
Great answer. Okay, maybe I don't know. How are you doing for time, Brittni? It's 10:10. We're 10 minutes after.
Yeah, I maybe could do one more question. Is that okay?
Okay, let's do one more.
Cool.
well, first I wanted to, well, there's one question that I can answer quickly, which is, do you ever run sprints using Post-its and then use Mural scan to digitize in refinement? I think, well, for anyone who doesn't know, this is something new that we're pushing out. It's currently in beta. Mural.co/scan. So you can just take your phone and scan your Post-it notes that are on the wall, and they will send directly into your Mural canvas. And
it's very cool. Yeah.
To the chat right now. And for the last question, let's just go up and pick the most upvoted.
Upvoted. Cool.
Okay. Well, how do you balance design sprint speed and structure with fluidity and adaptation? Deep.
Yeah. So I think that the thing to remember when it comes to the design sprint is that it's not something that it's something that you really should or could be doing almost like quarterly, right? Like it's something that it's a tool that you can take and you can kind of put in the mix of however you're working. Like we work with people, we do design sprints with people who are working in waterfall. We work with design sprints who are doing agile. Like we're working in all those kind of landscapes, right? So you can take the design sprint and actually put it into that structure, however you are working. And the thing is that you definitely shouldn't. What it will do is, two things. I could have shown you some slides on this, but when to do a design sprint is kind of a thing also I think that people struggle with, and it might help answer this question. So doing a design sprint when something is kicking off, like a project is kicking off, that is a really great point to do a design sprint. It gets people excited, it gets people motivated, it gets them on the right track. And that is really nice you can take that momentum back into kind of the way that you're working. So starting a project. Another really great time to do a design sprint is when you're at that like glitch point, or there's like this kind of like, it's not really working very well. There's some kind of crisis going on. Any kind of crisis point in a project, that's usually a really great time to do a design sprint. So it's not about unfortunately, design sprints are so like logical and cold, and this process is just so like, it's very, very harsh that it doesn't really become this kind of like fluid. It doesn't really you can't start doing design sprints as your way of working always. You'll be exhausted because that's just not how it works. It's something that you can plug in when you are at this point of like kicking off, crisis point, or you can do it as like a quarterly, project planning session, or quarterly check-in, whereas we can see like, where's the project at? Let's do a quick LDJ to figure out a nice sprint topic, to get some more features like that our users will be excited about, or to make a shift and try to get some revenue from a different stream, whatever it is. So I would say that is my answer, which I hope was kind of answering what they asked. What if I smile like this? Does that help? Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, we still have 280 people with us. Fortunately,
wow.
we got to end it here. Thank you, everybody, for joining and staying. This has been amazing. The questions were great, and we're gonna put together the follow-up materials and send those out in the coming days. I'll have everything from Brittni, the presentation, other PDF, links to a masterclass and get started.
This was really fun, really.
Really fun.
Yeah, it was great. And we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
All right.
Cool.
Take care, everybody.